when you're looking at sustainable practices in the arts, the first thing you have to really think about is how any arts movement or any creative movement is going to have to be, it's always about people. So when we were starting the magazine, one of the first people I brought in to inaugurate my participation with the magazine was Yoko Ono. And so over the course of the last several issues I've worked with, I've brought in a couple other of my favorite artists. I'll just give you a little bit of roster. For example, we have Ai Weiwei was in the current issue, and he did a fun thing about architecture and design. And the whole idea is to kind of get people to really think about eclecticism and the idea that so many magazines are really like kind of just basic formula. And as an artist, I've really wanted to see that you don't have to have these norms of like critical discourse. So how do we get that to translate into a new kind of medium? So the first step for me was to go straight to the artist. And it's really important to say that, look, this is a comfortable forum. It's not a critic writing about you. It's actually you and your own aesthetic, giving a platform to be able to kind of re-express some of the things that, you know, there's this, critics always like to say, oh, artists shouldn't self-promote. The critics are supposed to promote you or something. And I'm like, fuck that. You know? So, so it's kind of like there's a lot of really incredibly artistic artists who are also really articulate with writing, with being able to express their work, but they've been muted by the critical discourse over the years. So one of the things that's really important is to say, let's hit the reset button on that. And so over the course of the last couple issues, we've worked with people as diverse as Bjork, for example. And in the upcoming issue, we have some really intriguing figures like Julia Stiles. But one thing Miranda just said at the beginning of the discussion is that she was talking about celebrities. I'm really not into celebrities. So we always have a very intense tension about that. Because I think actually sometimes on the left we for lack of a better word, like over-credit celebrity stuff. And it's really important for me that it's about people. It's not just because Leonardo DiCaprio has a foundation, which is great, you know, for supporting eco-activist work. But it's about people like you all in the room who are really going to, you know, catalyze. So what I wanted to do today was give you guys a couple ideas of some of the articles that we've had. In the recent issue, I'll just show you really quick. We had Margaret Atwood write about, she has a great project called Payback. And Payback was essentially a kind of project where she's looking at how debt kind of creates these intense loops of cultural production. So I thought it was really cool to be able to ask Margaret, as an old friend of mine, just to kind of come into the mix and see what's going on. One of the other articles was by a gentleman by the name of Vikram Gandhi. He did a really interesting project called Kumare, where he pretends to be a fake guru. And he's Indian, and so it was kind of funny. All these Americans, specifically mainly white Americans, start following him because he's like mystical Indian guy. And so he starts making like all like yoga poses and stuff like that that are totally not like true. So by the end of the film, he's like, "Hey, I'm an Indian guy from New Jersey," and the white people were like really pissed off. They're like, "Hey, we liked you when you were fake. You know what's going on?" So I thought that'd be fun to go straight to him. Olafur Eliasson, he's a really renowned artist. He had a big show at the Tate Modern recently about the texture of sunlight. So I thought it would be fun to go straight to, again, we go straight to the artist and we ask them what's on their mind. He's an artist who uses a lot of scientific data to look at how the human eye looks at perception through light forms and so on. So his show at the Tate, he did a piece called Sun, which is you walked in and they had an exact simulation of the texture of sunlight. And then, of course, above all, Ai Weiwei is probably one of the most renowned artists going right now. He was put in a secret prison in China recently, and he's still under house arrest. So I asked him to talk about his artistic practices with architecture, because amusingly enough, he designed the Beijing Olympic Stadium with Herzog de Meuron, which is a really incredible architecture firm. So to make a long story short, when you're thinking about the 21st century, half the battle is being able to speak in multiple platforms. So what we're going to be doing over the course of the next year is looking at not just digital media, but of course physical print still has a reasonable presence. I don't really read physical magazines anymore, but we're going to be updating and working with a lot of people like, well, you know.
Heard it here first.
Yeah, well, it's a very real thing. I mean, physical media versus digital media, you have to always kind of think about the distribution mechanisms, and I think you're seeing a radical change in that. And again, the idea that digital platforms have a really amazing amplification process with any interesting content is really important, very critical.
And I also think as an artist, and a lot of us are probably artists or a part of some kind of social change movement or, you know, whether it's environmental or humanitarian, I think you have to be willing to suffer. And you have to have a very clear vision. For me as an artist, quitting is not an option. And if you keep going, and it's going to be hard, and some days it feels like you're just punched in the face. I mean, because there's a lot of, I mean, you will suffer for this. You will suffer for your art. It's going to be hard. And for anybody growing organizations or growing startups, you cannot listen to reason. At some point, you just have to follow that. Once you know something wants to be born and something wants to be created, and this is where I get kind of mushy, and he doesn't like it. But once you know that something wants to be created through you, and this is your life passion, you go. And you just go, and some days you just cannot. Quitting is not an option, and it will grow. And we're finally at this tipping point now where it's like we're getting calls from people going, hey, we want to be a part of this movement. We want to write for you. You know, Jack Johnson just sent us an email, and it's kind of mainstream. But these people, he talks about local. He talks about Farm Aid. You know, we just got to hang out with him at Farm Aid and talk about local, not just buying local from your farmers, but local coffee shops, supporting the people in your communities. And this is like those cool conversations that I'm just not seeing, these substantive kind of conversations I'm not seeing in normal media, especially print media. And one other thing I wanted to touch on is I want to talk about women's issues, because art and sustainability for the planet is great, but sustainability for women and our quality of life, like I'm not seeing issues about miscarriage. I'm not seeing issues about eating disorders, like real and raw. So not only do we go straight to artists to write about their own work, we don't do critics, we don't write about people. I interview you, or we interview, or you can write about your own work, is we need women and we need men talking about real things. Raw, it's real. So we kind of mix that in. So we'll have interview with like 50 Cent, we'll have Julia Stiles, we'll have Yoko, and then we'll have Deepak talking about meditation or whatever, you know, that's Deepak, and then we'll have these, we will really kind of weave in. So we use celebrity to get the mainstream to kind of pick up the magazine. And when you do, you'll find out how donating $20 to Habitat for Humanity or these other organizations can really impact. But also for women, you know, this is like a passion of mine, like how can we support Somali Mom or Mira Savino and her new film Trade of Innocence, like how can we actively get legislation in this country, not human trafficking just in India and Thailand and all over the world, but what's happening here. And there's no laws on the books. There's nobody really protecting women and children. We need a stronger voice for that. And that's my, so growing up not having a voice has been my fuel for creating a platform where people like us can have a broader voice. So that was kind of like when I founded it, and I was like, this thing needs to be born. So that was kind of like the backstory of it. And then, so just take it from there.
Okay. But, well, you know what's fun, though, right now is that with the way the media is evolving and with all the fragmentation of different mediums, platforms, apps, and so on, I've been thinking much more about remixing the media, and that idea that sampling a collage allows you to kind of go through some of the kind of different channels and backdoor channels and other channels that you normally wouldn't engage. I mean, even like, for example, when she was talking about some of the celebrity stuff, which again, I'm not normally, we have this editorial tension.
A lot.
No, but it's a good tension. I just want to see more indie and progressive artists. So we also had an article in the current issue about the sound of the sun. Literally, the sun's electromagnetic sphere. I got a scientist from NASA to talk about that who also uses solar power for his projects. And so rather than I wanted to have a science and art article about that. We have architects, designers. IOA talked about, again, his building of some of the really intriguing structures in Beijing, and then the fact that he was put in a secret prison. And next 2 issues, we're going to have Maya Lin. She talks about her new foundation. She's an amazing architect. She designed the Vietnam War Memorial. We have Edward Bertansky, who's an incredible photographer. He's going to probably be about 2 issues from now. So again, you don't have to be celebrity-oriented to think about information.
One thing that we're doing is we have our eco editor here in the audience with us, and we have some amazing eco articles. This is Andrew Curry. And we also have our global youth editor covering, where's Ocean? She's here. And one of her passions, if I can just touch on it for just a minute, is getting these public, or these figures that have such a huge impact on this 12 to 18, like the people that I have some judgment, you know, about, like Justin Bieber's and those kind of figures. But I was like, what if, she mentioned to me, like, what if we could take that kind of social power and reframe it, remix it. I feel weird saying the word remix, but what if we could take that and really get these people that have 27 million Twitter followers and bring it into our platform, and she can get them to talk about, hey, instead of hanging out at the mall playing video games all day on the weekends, why don't you get involved with help building with Habitat? Or why don't you serve meals? Or why don't you help an elderly? Build up their self-esteem, give them a purpose, start building up our communities, ingraining social service and service in at this young age. So it's one of the things that she's doing, and she interviewed Philippe Cousteau, and she's interviewing these notable people, Santana, Michael Franti, all of these people, but we're really going to start focusing on these people who have, her job will be at 15, will be to really connect with these people that have this huge social impact with these like 12 to 18, because those are the people who are going to be taking our place. So I think that's really, and if you imagine if we had that kind of voice and they have that kind of power, what kind of change and shift that we could have using artists to really impact sustainability and humanitarianism. And then another thing that Andrew's doing for the next issue, we also have interviews with, we have ended up with 2 interviews with Jane Goodall, one with Sylvia Earle. And so we love your feedback on people that are really shifting the planet and doing big things on a community level, a global level, but really doing it in a powerful way. And Andrew's going to be documenting, his passion is endangered species and conservation. He lives in Boulder, Colorado, so he's really active on that front. So we really are like this meshing, what would your word be for, it's just like this, it's a platform, but it's like this throwing together, and I've seen people pick it up and they're like, what the hell is this? It's like some yoga, it's design, it's art, but it always has an undertone of shifting change and bringing consciousness. So if you notice in all of our interviews, even with the celebrities, it's like, what causes do you support? What issues? What organizations do you support? So in the interviews, we ask them things like, what makes you vulnerable? What do you do with pain? Like, what inspires you? Why do you want to wake up in the morning? So I'm really interested in having deeper conversations with whether it's indie people or celebrities or nonprofits. Like, let's have these deeper conversations.